Three. Hi, this is Off the Shelf. I'm David Bristow, and I'm joined today by the author of this particular book. And by this particular book, I mean this particular book. Now, there are writers, and then there are writers, and then there's David Bristow. So, good morning to the other DB. How are you, David?
Hello, David. I'm perfect, but I think you still got the old screenshot up. Can you see me?
Yes, I can. Of
There we
course,
go.
of course I
So
can.
just to show that I'm the cutting edge of style and fashion, I've coordinated for
Oh, is that what
today's
it is?
meeting. You see what I mean?
Yeah. That's why I couldn't see the book. It was hidden in your shirt. But before we get into this, you mentioned to me just before we started that something went horribly wrong with this particular print run, and that you've got to virtually return to the beginning, so to speak. That can't be very good, seeing it's Christmas time and you want the books out on the shelf.
No, it's not very good. It's very bad. So the wrong print file
Mhm.
was sent to the printer, and we've had to recall the entire print run, and then it'll only excuse me, it'll only go out to the bookstores in February because they only start restocking in February. But it is available online. So even
Okay.
Amazon and Takealot, the wrong print files were sent, but we've corrected those. So the properly edited files are available online. And the Takealot system is print on demand, so you can get a printed copy if you want.
Okay, because otherwise I'm going to say this is the copy that I have then is going to be a collector's item because right on page one is the first error.
I know what it is. It says in his mid 1920s.
20 years. You know how many times I read that line, David? Going, no, hang on a second. What is DB trying to say here? Is there some deep and psychological meaning that I need to search for? And then I realized, no, it's a typo. So tell us, firstly, congratulations, because this book has been published by Southern Right Publishers, which is a whole new um, experience for you now being published, being involved in the actual publishing as well. So you're going to send your self-rejection letters now. Dear Mr. Bristow, thank you. Thank you for your submission. Unfortunately, it
Yeah.
in with the type of book we like to publish.
Yeah. In January or maybe December, January this year, an old journalism classmate of mine, Monty Roodt, who was professor of sociology at Rhodes University, um, sent me a manuscript of a book he had self-published.
Mhm.
And I was very straightforward. And I said, the cover doesn't work. It doesn't have a pick-me-up sense.
Mhm.
There's I'm a typographical freak. I was trained on hot metal typography, so I really understand how type, the mechanism type
Mhm.
works. And young designers don't learn that stuff. They don't understand type as deeply as possibly they might.
Mhm.
So I picked up typographical errors and then a few other little, editing things. And I said to Monty, if you're going to self-publish, you've got to up the standard. So he said to me something on the grounds of, okay, wise ass, if you're so clever and you know everything, you show me. So after the third bottle of wine, we agreed to start a publishing company, not just for ourselves, but for other writers who are struggling to get into the mainstream. So if I may continue to about what Southern Right is.
Yes.
Okay, so the name came after the 17th bottle of wine. A southern right whale breached in front of Monty while he was walking along the Hermanus cliff edge, and he said, "It's a sign." So, for
And
better or
you
worse,
said,
we are now
no,
southern
it's a
right.
whale.
Yeah.
There's something different.
So we have there's this pay to publish model where you pay mostly overseas, although one or two South African companies where you pay them, let's just say for argument's sake, 30 grand, and
Mhm.
then you get a book. But You will mostly be disappointed for a number of reasons,
Right.
and that they don't have your well-being at heart in any way. They take your money, they put out a limited number, and there they sit.
Yeah.
Um, so we decided, okay, what we do for ourselves, we will do for other writers. We do, from manuscript assessment down to putting it on the online portals. We go through the whole process menu, and you choose what you want. Like if your great grandfather's a Henri Matisse, let him do the cover. We won't charge you. That
Mm.
kind of thing. If your wife or husband is works for is an editor, let them do the editing. So you choose from our menu, but we can and do then put all the pieces together, and you get a book, and then we help you as best we can to do the hardest part. And it's not the writing, and it's not the publishing, it's the selling.
Yeah.
Um, the selling is the crux of it. So I won't go into that part anymore in any more depth, but we help with all those things, which the other guys just leave you. They print the book and leave you. Oh, great. Yeah, that's Southern Right Publishers.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing. When I should be retiring and writing my own books, I now got involved with this project, and we've already one, two, three, four, five, six books in.
Wow.
We've got three in the works,
Mm.
and we've probably got another two coming this year. So we busy already, you know.
Well, good for you. Now, I have to say, and I've known you for a while, and I've read lots of your books, and I've hosted you at book evenings. This book taught me an inordinate amount about you. And stuff that you have done, David,
Mm,
defies
mm.
description. I mean, it reads like an adventure novel, and it's a series of short story or a series of stories that this book contains. But you've done almost everything. You're the type of person that sitting around with bottle of wine number two, you're gonna go, nah, you never did that. And then you go, yes, I did. More than once.
Yeah, it's a bit of crazy shit, and there are two reasons for that. The one is that, you beware the person you meet in primary school who becomes your China.
Mm.
Because I met this mad guy, and he would just say, "Let's build a box cart and go down Bryanston Drive. You drive," and
Yeah.
off
And
I
you
would
did.
go. Um, let's jump off a mountain. Okay, let's go. Hurdle. Let's go and enter the Natal downhill mountain bike championships. Oh, okay, that sounds. So I inadvertently got into doing all these crazy things. Because this friend of mine he's incredibly competent and ultra competitive,
Mm.
and I'm neither of those things. So I got to do rock climbing, mountain climbing, spearfishing, paragliding. So then I could do these things. So when it came to a chance for somebody to say, well, do you want to go on an expedition to climb, I kind of think, well, okay, I sort of can, and I've got into situations where I find myself hanging upside down on a rope in the Himalayas, thinking, "What was I thinking?" But eventually, you get to do these things: whitewater kayaking down the Victoria Falls, the Patoka Gorge. You just end up doing stuff because, kind of, as a writer, I never say no.
Mm.
Somebody says, "Do you want to do something?" I say, "Well, yeah." Um, so yeah, I guess I could go on and on, but that's the crux of it. I never say no, and I've got this crazy friend.
Yeah, well, there you go. And you prove it in the book. You also go into derivations of names of places, places that I have been to multiple times or driven past multiple times and never wondered about the whys and the wherefores. And many of those have been answered by this. This was a great holiday read, I have to tell you. It just went by too
So
quick, and there was a lot of laughter involved.
yeah, yeah, my ex-wife. Best, the less said about that, the better. Um, yeah, just to put it in context, these are so the 20 best of four books that I wrote. The first one was crazy characters from Southern Africa, past and present.
Right.
Then the publisher says, okay, that did very well, David. What you going to do next? So I thought, okay, I've been a travel journalist, so I'll do my 20 favorite places that have a backstory. So it's not Golden Gate and it's not the canyon,
Mm.
Bladder River Canyon. It's Mapungubwe or
Yeah.
Adam's Calendar or Game Pass Shelter. Um, the third one was during COVID. I sat and thought, okay, well, I also happen to be in the quest of not getting a proper job in my life. I became an environmental scientist. Um, so I thought, okay, let me do 20 environmental stories,
Mm.
ranging from, and this has come up recently in the Daily Maverick, ultra processed foods, things that look like food, like Pringles chips.
Yeah.
No potato was harmed in the making of a Pringle chip. It's made from chemically manufactured paste.
So we
And so is about 80% of the food we buy, processed foods in supermarkets. And a lot of it causes terrible, terrible health problems from, irritable bowel syndrome to cancer,
mm.
and everything in between. So I wrote about that. I wrote about how did we get to the stage in the world? We've chopped down the rainforest. We've exacerbated climate change. So there's farming, there's food production, there's how did our water, which is now pertinent, gets so bad? Well, I'll
Yeah.
tell you what the very simple answer there, because people listening or viewing, it's that two previous ministers of water affairs, Mokonyane and Sisulu, stole between them 1 billion rands from the coffers of the water department. So the money for the big infrastructural stuff was stolen.
Mm.
Now, what's happened to these people? So far, nothing. So what happened to Eskom? We basically know now what happened to Eskom, but even there's a backstory that I didn't write about because I wasn't 100% sure. And the backstory is that to get rid of Zuma, in politics you have to make deals with devils, many devils
Yeah.
to get to the top. Um, Cyril Ramaphosa made deals with the premier of Mpumalanga province, which
Mm.
nobody was expecting. It was a very clever move, David Mabuza. But David Mabuza was a gang lord, a warlord, and he was already pilfering at Eskom. He was given Eskom to pilfer as a kind of the payback for throwing his weight behind Cyril Ramaphosa. So we had to suffer 5 years of terrible load shedding before he got his piece of the pie. And now, you know what? You haven't heard about David Mabuza for a year. He just disappeared like he was a ghost.
Yeah.
Now load shedding's gone. Well,
But
that's
now
the
we've got
price we
water
paid.
shedding.
Well, that's also because of the terrible mismanagement of the
Yeah.
department for the previous 10 years.
Mm.
Nothing was done. The money was stolen. It was stripped. So these are the things I talk about, but also rhino poaching and the gangs behind the rhino poaching. I did an entire year's research delving into the gang, some in Mozambique, some in Messina, some in the Waterberg, and I've updated that story about who are the people who are behind the rhino poaching. Well, most of them are farmers who are paying other people. And,
Mm.
and, and then there's the good stories. There's the good stories about the good people. And then there are the stories about my misadventures in the wilds, to which you kind of inadvertently refer. Going camping in the Okavango when I was 17. All I knew about the wilderness was stealing cars and taking drugs in Hillbrow. And suddenly I'm sleeping on the ground in the Okavango Delta, trying to stop lions eating me. Um,
I know that
so
that
that's a,
that sort of thing fascinated me, and I'll tell you what, sorry to talk over you, but
no, please.
our modern youth, and I'm generalizing now, would never, if they made the worst their mates would say is switch off your phone for 15 minutes and see if you can survive.
Yeah,
Going to the
yeah.
Delta back then was a proper adventure. You didn't go to a five-star game lodge. You were sleeping on a beach. You knew nothing of the crocodiles that could have eaten you, the lions that could have chewed you up, the
No, no, we
hyenas
were
that have been known to kill people in that area. Yet off you
no,
went,
we were
come back and
no,
you've,
mad.
this is
Yeah,
the amazing thing. Without people like you, David, there wouldn't be stories like this. And then people like me at my age can't go, oh, damn, if only I'd started a little younger. But at 71, I'm not prepared to tackle most of the things that you did in this.
No, no. When I look back on it, it's mad. On the one trip, I did two trips as a teenager to the Okavango. We hitchhiked from Johannesburg.
Mm.
Part of the way we caught a train from Ramatlabama on the Botswana border to Francistown, hitchhiked on cattle trucks to Maun. There were no safari camps. It was a hunting area.
Yeah.
And then we found a guy in Maun, a Baye guy who polled his Makoro, paid him 10 Rand each and a bag of mealie meal and said, take us into the Delta and come back for us in 3 weeks' time. Well, I'm still here to tell that story. But on the one trip that I haven't written that story in this book. If there's a second edition, I'll do it. We just set off one day, walking neck deep in water from island to island to island in the Okavango Delta. I mean, how mad, how absolutely psychotic is that? Literally,
I mean, aside from the
got
crocodiles,
lost.
the hippos could have
Yeah,
got.
hippos, crocodiles, whatever you can imagine. I mean, we didn't even think twice about doing it. It's crazy.
But do you think, David, that back then it was a different mindset? An adventure was a real adventure rather than just we need to go from A to B, so let's take a manual drive car instead of an automatic type of thing. I know I'm being very superficial now, but
Yeah,
it's
no.
that type of thing, you
You
know.
know, I remember it very vividly. I remember the experience very vividly, but I don't remember my mindset at the time very vividly, other than just about everything I did, referring to my crazy mate. I was terrified all the time. It wasn't like I was gung ho. I always felt I am so deep in trouble. I'm so deep underwater, so deep out of my comfort zone and my skill set zone,
Yeah.
that I really want to be at home in my bed. And this mate of mine, Donald, he often says, referring to me,
Mm.
he ran out of talent. I ran out of talent.
But what did your parents say? I mean, where are you off to now? I don't know. I'll see you in 3 weeks' time if I survive.
No, that was exactly the situation. My parents were both very intellectual, although my mother was not educated. Um,
Mm.
but my father was an absent-minded professor type guy. My mother was an entrepreneur, so she was too busy. She popped out three boys, bing, 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 within 2.5 years,
Mm.
and then wound us up and let us go. We had to look after each other, so we, we were never asked where we were going. I
Okay.
remember once a friend of mine phoned during, I was 14 or 15, and I'd hitchhiked down to Salt Rock,
Mm.
and I was just sleeping on the beach. So my friend Nigel phones, my father picks up, says, Nigel says to my dad, hi, is David there? He says, no. He says, where is he? He says, I have no idea. So that was my parenting.
I'm laughing because I'm just wondering about people who are going to watch this and who are going to think, A, we either did it or didn't, and B, more importantly, we should have. But parents worried in those
Yeah.
days, or they maybe even worry more now. But I mean, when you speak of hitchhiking, I guarantee you that if you spoke to one of the Gen Zs nowadays and said, "Do you know about hitchhiking?" you could have been speaking a foreign language because it's too scary to
Yeah.
hitchhike now. It was scary
Well,
to
you can't.
hitchhike back then as well.
It wasn't as scary. The 70s was, let's go back and remember, it was the hippie era. It
Yeah.
was the sort of late 60s, early 70s. I'm talking about now, Okavango was up to 75. So it was the time of the youth revolution.
Mm.
And it was accepted that young people like you and I were hitchhiked to get around, and therefore people stop for us. Nice people stop for us.
Yeah.
Nice people don't stop anymore, so it's not an option anymore.
Mm. Just as a matter of interest, how many or how much drug, or how many drugs and alcohol sessions were involved in the stories in this book, David?
No, none at all in those
Really?
stories. But
Yeah.
look, I'm not embarrassed to say that I went down to Ramsgate in the age of about 16 or 15,
Mm.
and had my first joint with one of my older brothers.
Right.
And wow, I didn't become a druggie, but I
Mm.
started smoking marijuana, and it was hard
Mm.
to get hold of. So on Friday night, we went to the local filling station and got a matchbox. So I never took a lot, but um, I really relished the experience of altering my mind. And I think that's got a lot to do with becoming a writer later on, although I didn't realize it was preparation or apprenticeship to letting my mind um, go exploring.
Mm.
Um, for a short period in my life, towards the end of my first university degree at Rhodes University, I mean, it was quite wild there. I experimented with LSD, and I
Mm.
think it's two of the three times I did it are three of the most incredible mental experiences I've ever had. But it's scary, dangerous shit. So I haven't done mushrooms as an adult, and I don't
Right.
do it anymore. But I did do it, and I loved it. I've got to say, I absolutely loved it, but I'm not an addictive personality type.
Okay.
Um, so it's informed my life.
Mm.
But when my first child was born, I said,
That's
that's
it.
over.
Yeah.
That's it.
Are there, looking back on the stories in the book, David, are there stories or are there adventures that maybe your friend didn't quite talk you into enough? That in retrospect you've gone, maybe he should have pushed a little bit harder, and then I would have done it.
Yeah, there's one thing that terrifies me, and it's batsuit flying.
Yeah,
Wingsuit flying. I know that if I had been 20 when they became a thing, I would have tried it. And
really.
um, base
Base
jumping
jump.
and or wingsuit flying. I think those are the two most dangerous things that you could possibly do in the world, and I'm
Right.
glad I didn't. Um, but yes, I would have.
Because you see, there's a new batsuit that they've just launched, and the guy has broken a world record. He cracked 200 kilometers an hour. It's one of the Red Bull pilots in one of those batsuit things. I mean, 200
Yeah,
Ks is fast in a car, let alone when you're coming out of an aircraft or off the top of a mountain type of thing.
I was cured of that extreme stuff. I think while I was at Getaway, I organized to go to document the first free ascent of a big wall, a big, huge, curved oceanic wave. It's called Oceans of Fear. It's
Yeah.
a big wall in the Head River Mountains on Milner Peak with
Mhm.
two of the then South Africa's top rock climbers, Andy de Klerk and Ed February. And I set up a team at Getaway to do fixed ropes and do the camera work and spend several days with them camping in the mountains while they forged their way up this, I don't know, it was 25 or 30 pitch climb, at the end of which they were going to wingsuit fly off it down the valley
Mhm.
into the Dodoons Valley, through the cleft in the Hex River
Yeah.
Mountains. And sitting through that experience made me realize that thank God I didn't go any further with the stuff because it is so mad out there
Yeah.
that, you know, it's like being a Formula One racing driver. Only 20 people can do it. Only 20
Mhm.
people are good enough. The rest
Yeah.
are going to die if they try too hard.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I would have died if I had carried on with that kind of crazy stuff.
I watch those free ascent people and I go, can you not afford ropes and carabiners? Because they're not that expensive. You can use them. Nobody's forcing you to
No.
find handholds with your fingertips and then hang off that with nothing beneath you. And you say it's the most exhilarating thing you've ever done. It's scary.
Well, you can understand that it is the most exhilarating thing that you could ever do. It is, but to have the constitution to contain your fear
Yeah.
and to believe so universally in your abilities is you know, how many people in the world can do that? There are not many, maybe
No.
there's a few dozen at most in the entire world who are able to do that. And
Yeah.
possibly, and I don't know, but I possibly think that once you know that you can, you get a thrill out of doing it. I don't know, Dave. It's beyond me. It's so beyond what I've ever done
Mm.
that I don't know.
Where are there stories in the book, David, that when you read them now, still go, why wasn't I more scared? And you've just said, you've just mentioned about your ability and how confident you need to be. But in the moment, you go, I don't really know. I'm scared of hippos and crocodiles, but my mates are walking, so I may as well just follow them type of thing. I'll try and be in the
Yeah,
middle so that the croc will get the front one, the hippo will get the back one, and I can just hop onto dry land and survive.
yeah, there is something of that in it. And I think I said before that I was scared most of the time.
Mm,
And, canoeing, getting attacked. I just skim over mentioning the time I was attacked by a hippo in the Zambezi and had
mm,
my canoe bitten in two. I did escape, but it was the closest dam run thing after Waterloo. Um, uh, that day, but I'm writing a series of short stories, and one of them is about the day I nearly died. And there's 10 days in my life where it was an absolute coin flip whether I lived or died.
mm.
So looking back, yeah, I did take chances, but I was never the biggest chance taker. They were
Right.
always the people I was following.
Yeah. So you're not so much of the I'll be on the horse leading. You'll be behind the horse
No.
picking up the crap, but at least you're following the horse.
In paragliding, which I did up to a certain incompetent level, there's a thing called the wind dummy. So you're sitting
Right.
on top of a high ridge or mountain, and there's a group of paragliders. Now, here's another thing about my life that I never planned. It just happened this way.
Right.
The people I hung out with, for various reasons that is too complicated to go into, ended up becoming very good rock climbers, like
Mm,
the best in the country, and then very good mountain bikers, like the guys who do the Cape Epic, and then very good paragliders, who the South African paragliding team,
mm,
very good rock mountaineers. I ended up climbing mountains with people who had climbed Everest, and I was always I was always the wind dummy. So in paragliding, the wind dummy is you're sitting on top of the mountain, and all the good guys are waiting for the wind to become favorable, updraft that's
mm.
not too weak or not too strong. So what they do is they get the beginner and they put him in front and sweet talk him and say, "Okay, you go first then, because to test," and then they watch you. So you tell them what the wind is doing.
Yeah.
So I was always the wind dummy.
Mm.
And I explained, yeah, that's how I would explain how I got into all these crazy situations.
The story of your life, David. Um,
Kind of. Maybe that's the title of my book, The Wind Dummy.
the wind up, there you go. The book, as you say, is due for reprint for the reasons that you mentioned earlier. It is available
Yeah.
online. What would you want the readers to take away from the book?
Because it's the best of four different books, there's different things, but I would like to think or believe I'm a good storyteller, and there are
And that
stories
you
there
are.
that there are stories there that South Africans should know.
Mm.
And I'm going to tell you two very quickly, just about two of the characters in that book that we never learnt about at school.
Right.
The one is a guy called Coenraad de Buys. He was born in the mid 1700s of a Trekboer family. He became a Trekboer. He stood 7 feet tall. He because of his huge size and personality, he gathered people around him. And over time, he became a veritable moving army across the South African eastern frontier as white and black and brown people started fighting over the land, sort of between, if you like, the Overberg, Swellendam to the Great Fish River. Now, he got a price put on his head. He eventually was said to have fathered 300 children. He escaped the Dutch East India Company army to the Orange River. Then the British took over the Cape, and the British army were after him. So he followed the Molopo River to the Limpopo, and he arrived in the Soutpansberg 30 years before the Voortrekkers.
Wow.
And
Okay.
that's just the very bare bones of the story. This is one of the greatest adventure stories, possibly the greatest adventure stories to have ever happened and to never have been told.
Yeah.
So to find that story, I found the story in a footnote in a
Mhm.
book called Frontiers by Noel Mostert, The History of the Xhosa Speaking People. And there's this footnote, and I thought, what's that about? And it took master's degree at Pretoria University, written in the early 20th century. It took me to a secondhand bookstore in Youngstown, Missouri, to find the story of this
Wow.
man's life. So I've put together uh, um, research, deep research, that is just otherwise not available and would never otherwise have been available. And in fact, I won't tell you a second story, but that's the kind of thing I do. I go very deeply into
Mm.
subjects, be it Bushman rock art. What's rock art about? Well, let me take you on a journey
Yeah.
across the River Styx into the world of spirits and spirit gods and the first religion and the first art of the human race. And it still survives today as a thread through the Sand people, through the Khoi people, through the Xhosa and the Nguni people, in the lives of South Africans today. You know, it's
Yeah.
still there. There's this, and you can go and see it in rock art
As I
in the
was saying at the
Drakensberg.
beginning of our conversation, and we're coming to the end now, there are writers,
Yeah.
there are writers, and then there is David Bristow. Go out and find yourself a copy of this. If you can find one like this that has that mistake on page one, hang on to it. One day you never know. This may be worth a lot of money. David, thank you so much for joining me on Off the Shelf. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. It always is. And time just goes by so very quickly. I wish you all the best with the book, and I wish Southern Right all the best with their publications. And I hope to be chatting to more of your authors in the new year.
Thanks, David. See you, but.
Cheers for now. My guest today on Off the Shelf, David Bristow. This is the book. Go and look for it. You can find it online currently.